Okay, so hello and good evening, everyone. Let's start from where we have stopped yesterday. And yesterday, the thing I told you at means the discussion of the last class was centered around borrowings because we was discussing about what we was discussing about fiscal deficit, right? We was discussing about fiscal deficit. And fiscal deficit, I told you can just simply keep this thing in your mind. Fiscal deficit is what? That is budget deficit plus borrowings, right? And what is budget deficit? Budget deficit, in short, it is BD and it is FD. BD is total expenditure minus total receipts. Total expenditure minus total receipts is known as budget deficit. Fine. So this is the fiscal deficit, and I told you regarding the borrowing. Borrowing are what? Borrowings are integral part of budget, right? It is an integral part of budget, and it is not like the common man's perception regarding borrowings. For government, borrowing basically, I told you in the last class, borrowing can be for the two purpose. One is you want to fulfill your basic requirements, right? Another purpose is to doing the investments. And because investments are going to increase your income in future, so that is why borrowing will be remain always a part of budget, and that is why there will be always a fiscal deficit. No government around the world, they will try to make fiscal deficit zero. No one want to make their fiscal deficit zero. Fiscal deficit zero means expenditures and receipts are equal and there is no borrowings, right? So nobody want to make it zero. Why? If you will make it zero, that means borrowing is going to zero. That means you are not going to borrow any money for the further investment, so that can increase your income. So there is no concept of zero fiscal deficit. Generally, it is considered that 2% to 3% fiscal deficit of your GDP is an ideal indicator, right? Is an ideal indicator for your country's economic overall prospects, right? So this is why I told you about FRBM Act. FRBM Act was passed in 2003 with the target to somewhere around 2008, 2009. We have to put it down by 3%. However, government was failed to achieve this target, so that is why this act, fiscal responsibility. Sometimes they will ask even the full form of this FRBM, right? They'll ask the full form of the FRBM. FRBM stand for fiscal FRBM stand for Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act, right? Okay, so FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. Fine. So the target was not able to achieve by the government in 2008-9, so they have shifted the goalpost and they have made the target for 2011-12 or 12-13. Even after that, they are not able to achieve this target. Then government has set up a review committee on FRBM, whether the FRBM targets are superficial or we need to revise all these things. So that is part of fiscal policy. I will discuss it later in the fiscal policy part. However, in the budget, when government present the budget, they apart from this document on budget deficit is being presented in the budget. However, apart from this too, government also show primary deficit and revenue deficit. Primary deficit and revenue deficit. Fine. So what is primary deficit and revenue deficit? And one more definition regarding outcome budget. So anyone here can tell me what is outcome budget? Shushmita, good evening. Venkat, good evening. Good evening. Ankur XP, can you share Telegram group for study? Ankur, actually, I do not have any Telegram group kind of the thing right now. The one group is there, that is for our paid students. So if you are a paid student, you can request to admin. They will add you in the group. What is outcome budget? Without going for copy paste kind of the thing, if you know, then tell me. If you don't know, let me know. I'll explain. But don't go for this copy paste kind of the thing. Search copy paste. Anyone? What is outcome budget? The banker's mind, 39.8. What do you mean to say 39.8? Please decode it. The banker's mind. No one? Okay. Okay. I will let you know what is the outcome budget. So when we have calculated this budget deficit, it is of total expenditure minus total receipts. Okay. And in total expenditure, it is comprised of what? It is comprised of revenue expenditure plus capital expenditure. At the same time, it is comprised of revenue receipts and capital receipts. Revenue receipts and capital receipts. Right. So we can write this thing as budget deficit is equal to RE plus CE minus RR plus CR. Okay, so we can write this thing in this manner, right? Now, when we say about our revenue expenditure, it is like expenditure on basic needs plus, if any, liability, right? If any liability. And I told you, when I say liability and when I say the basic needs like expenditure on health, education, right? Defense, various social sector schemes, right? Social sector schemes. So all these expenditures are being part of what? Are being part of revenue expenditure because they are basic necessities, right? Whereas I told you earlier also, I'm telling you right now also, when we say liability here, it is comprised of interest payments on borrowings. Interest payments on borrowing, we do not include principal payments on borrowing. Interest payments on borrowing and principal amount payment of borrowing. We are going to pay both amount, interest payments plus principal amount payment. We are going to make it. But as a liability, we will show only what? Interest payments. Why we do show interest payments? Why? Because interest are a kind of liability which is not going to create any asset. Whereas the principal amount, suppose that I have borrowed 100 rupees, right, and I have to pay 110 with the interest rate of 10%. So I am going to pay 100 plus this 10, and this 100 I have borrowed to invest. I have borrowed to invest so that I can make it 112, right? Whereas this interest payment which I am going to pay back, that is not going to create any asset for me, right? So that is going to be considered as only liability, right? That is going to be considered as only liability. However, it is an expenditure, so we must include in the expenditure. We must include this thing in the expenditure. Now, equation is like that. When I wrote this equation is revenue expenditure, capital expenditure, revenue receipts, capital receipts. So suppose that this interest payment, in short, I just put it IP. IP is what? That is interest payments, right? So this RE can be written as RE minus IP. RE minus IP. Can we write it as RE minus IP? So if I will write RE, which is comprised of what? Which is comprised of what? It is comprised of interest payments. When I said this RE, that is revenue expenditure, it is already comprised of what? It is already comprised of interest payments. Okay. So if I will say RE minus IP, what we are going to get? If I will say RE minus IP, okay, interest payments. So what it is going to show us? What it is going to show us? It is going to show us how much actually money we are going to spend on all other things which are necessity in the nature, like health, education, right, social sectors, defense. All these things, maybe they are necessity, but it is going to help our citizens. It is going to help our citizens. It is not burden like interest payments. So interest payments are burden, whereas other expenditure in the revenue expenditure, they are not burden, because if they are not going to create an asset, but still they are going to uplift the living standard of the people of India. So when government is going to spend money on health, education kind of the thing, social sector kind of the thing, it is definitely going to provide the better living standard. And when we are spending on defense, it is going to provide a kind of secure environment for the country. So except interest payments, all other expenditures are going to tell us a picture. Picture of what? Picture what exactly we are going to spend, right, for our country's betterment. Whereas capital expenditure is going to show us what? Capital expenditure is going to show us what are the things which is going to create, and this is going to show investments, and investments will create future income. Investments will create a future income, right? Whereas revenue expenditure, all these things are going to create what? Improve the living standard. Only interest payments are pure burden in the nature. They are purely burden in the nature. Now we just want to know, if we will remove that burden part, what is our equation? If we will remove this interest payment part, how our equation is going to be look like, right? So generally what we will do, we minus total expenditure minus total receipts, we get the budget deficit. And we know that it is what? It is RE plus CE, right? And it is RR plus CR. So we just want to know, if we will remove the liability payment, right, the burden payment, then how much deficit we do have, right? Then how much deficit we do have. So what I did, RE minus IB. So from here I just reduce what? I just reduce RE minus IP. So this is the expenditure except interest payment. Means now this revenue expenditure is showing a picture where money is going to spend what? Money is going to be spent on various social sector parameters. Fine. So RE minus IP. Then here is RR plus CR. Right. RR plus CR. RR plus CR, but I told you CR is also comprised of what? Borrowings. Now what we want to know, I want to know, or we want to know, or nation want to know. Nation want to know how much government is purely going to spend, how much government is going to spend on various social sector, and how much government is going to invest for future income generation. And for that, how much money we are able to make, we are going to spend how much on social sector, how much we are going to invest so that our income can be increased. So this is our expenditure. Now for fulfilling that expenditure, how much money we do have without borrowings? How much money we do have without borrowings, we want to check it. Again, this is little bit complicated for those people who are studying this thing first time. So what is our objective? Our objective here is, we want to know how much we are going to spend on social sector, how much we are going to spend on income generation, right? And for these expenses, how much we do have minus borrowings. We don't want to check the borrowings. Apart from borrowings, how much we do have, right? So this is why what I did, I wrote RR plus CR, but CR minus B. B is borrowing, right? So this is going to show me a clear picture in terms of what? I will write this equation. RE, revenue expenditure, minus IP, that is interest payment. It is going to show country's total spending on various social sector, which is going to improve living standard of the people. Whereas capital expenditure is going to show how much government is going to spend on income generation in the country, right? So this is our expenditure. Now for this expenditure, how much money we are going to get without borrowings. So what I did, I'm going to write here revenue receipts plus capital receipts minus borrowing. Capital assets minus borrowing. Now let's open this equation. RE minus IP plus CE, then minus RR minus CR plus borrowings. Right? Now rewrite this equation. RE plus CE then RR plus CR. Okay, RR plus CR. Then what I am going to write? Borrowings and borrowings minus interest payments. Right? So this is going to be what? Total expenditure minus total receipts plus borrowings minus IP. And this is what? This is budget deficit plus borrowings minus IP. And this is what? Fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Right? So this is going to be your primary deficit. Fiscal deficit minus interest payments. Little bit maths, but is it clear? Is it clear? Is it clear or not? I'm not getting answer. ये simplification part. Simplification part. Any question? Any question in this regard? Is it clear? Just give me a second. Just give me 2 minutes. Huh? Just give me 2 minutes. I'm pausing the class. ऑगमेंटिंग थी तो लेकिन दिख नहीं रही कहीं पर। Okay, sorry for interruption. Okay. Uh, Sheetal is asking, sir, please make a strategy video on phase 1 of RBI grade B and RBI assistant both. Okay. And for NABARD 2022. Fine. Fine. I will consider. I will consider. First, the Zoom session is priority for the means our paid student, and definitely I will make this video also strategic video. Okay, Shital, I have taken this thing. Okay, Anup, means I'll include each and everything means for different exam. First of all, one general strategy how to go for what should be the approach of the student or aspirants who are seeking for these bank jobs, especially jobs in the regulatory body, and what was the exam psyche and what should be your approach, the right approach to appear in the exam in general. Then I'll go for what? Then I will go for a specific area wise strategy like RBI grade B, assistant, NABARD, SEBI. I will do that thing. Okay. So till then now what we have discussed three things, that is budget deficit, fiscal deficit, third is primary deficit, right? And fourth one is revenue deficit. Okay, revenue deficit. Revenue deficit equation is quite easier. In short, RD means revenue deficit. Here what we will do, revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts we do call as a revenue deficit, right? Revenue deficit. However, in 2012-13, when Mr. P. Chidambaram was the finance minister, he have presented an argument. He has presented an argument, and in his argument, he said that the revenue deficit is not showing the real thing. Means what we are calculating as a revenue deficit, with this calculation, it is not giving a real data. So people have asked, why do you think this is not giving a real data? Right? How do you think that it is not giving a real data? People have asked. So he explained in this manner. He said that, see, when we say revenue deficit, revenue expenditure, when we say revenue expenditure, it includes of, I told you, I have told you this thing again and again. This is the kind of expenditure where we are spending the money on various social sectors plus liability. However, when government show its expenditure like health, education, right, defense, and interest payments, all these expenditures are being considered under the revenue expenditure. And one expenditure, that is grant in aid to states. Grant in aid to states, right? And tax devolution to states, right? What is these two things? Let us discuss what are these two things and why Chidambaram want to remove this thing from the revenue deficit. Grant in aid and tax devolution to the states. First discuss this thing, what the tax devolution to the state. India is union of states, right? And if you look the tax structure, if you look the tax structure of India, major power of taxation is with union, right? Major power of taxation is with union, and states have very less area where they can tax, right? Where they can tax. and plus residuary power to tax is also with union. What is residuary power to tax? Means, see, in our constitution, who can put the tax on what? It is clearly defined. The area where union government can put the taxation, area where state governments can put the taxation, it is very clearly demarcated in our constitution in seventh schedule, right? Union list, state list, and concurrent list. But if something is going to be there which is not mentioned in this list, there is a list for union government, there is a list for the state government where they can apply for the tax, where they can apply the tax, right? On those things, they can apply the tax. It is clearly demarcated. But if something will come which is not mentioned, if something will come which is not mentioned either in the union or in the state, then automatically it will go to whom? Automatically it will go to the union. Automatically it will go to the union. So residuary power with the union also. So actually union have lot of taxation power, and it is going to create a problem in the sense, what problem? In the sense, if everything is going to state sorry union, then states are going to face some financial difficulties, right? So some part of the tax which is collected by the union must be given to the states. Now issue is how much should be given to the states and how much state can have it its own. So for that purpose, in our constitution, there is a mention of Article 280, that is Finance Commission. So for every 5 year, President of India will constitute a Finance Commission, and this Finance Commission will give the recommendation, number one, important recommendation, how much tax should be distributed. How much tax should be distributed between union and states, number one. Number two, he Finance Commission also advise Government of India, apart from the tax collection, whatever the tax collection is going to be done by Government of India, out of that how much you should give to the state, it is going to recommend. Second thing, it is going to recommend, apart from that tax part, Government of India must provide grant in aid to states. So this is suggested by whom? This is given by Finance Commission. So every year when government say that ki we are going to collect XYZ amount of tax. So government is announcing we have collected XYZ amount of tax. So out of XYZ, some MNO is going to with the union, whereas some ABC part will go to the states, right? That ABC part will go to the states. So what Government of India is going to give to states? I'm repeating again. Government is saying that we are going to receive the tax, and tax is the part of revenue receipts. Okay, tax is a part of revenue receipts. So X, Y, Z. This is going to be the part of revenue receipts. Okay. However, out of this, some part union is going to have it its own, and some part they have to give to whom? States. Right. So this amount which Government of India is going to give the states, they are going to show this part in revenue expenditure. This part is going to be shown in the revenue expenditure, whatever you are going to give the states. I'll show you how it is being shown. See, this is the document of Government of India, and here they are showing where money is going, where money is going, and in that they are showing that करों और शुल्कों में राज्यों का हिस्सा, states share in taxes and duties, that is 17 paise. They are considering Government of India have to spend 100 paise, and out of that 100 paise they are spending 17 paise on states shares, and that 17 paisa is going to be either part of capital expenditure or it is going to be part of revenue expenditure. So this money is not going to create any income for Government of India, right? It is not going to create any income for Government of India. So Government of India do not show in the capital expenditure. Government of India show it is the part of revenue expenditure, right? This is what I was showing to you here. Revenue expenditure, it includes of states share, right, of total tax receipts, right? So when I wrote revenue deficit, that is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. Okay, so this revenue expenditure is also comprised of what? States share of total tax receipt. For your for your easiness to understand, I just told it you as it is what? It is ABC. It is ABC. So here this revenue expenditure is inclusive of this ABC. Till then here, is it clear? What I explained you, is it clear? When I show the revenue deficit, it is comprised of revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. However, in the revenue expenditure, we also include ABC. That ABC is what? That ABC is a state's share from the tax receipt which is going to be received by Government of India. Till then here you are clear? Is it clear for you? Now, as this amount will go to whom? This amount will go to states. This ABC amount will go to states. And states are free to spend this money on their revenue expenditure as a capital expenditure. Means from this diagram, this is showing 17 paise. It is showing 17 paise, and this 17 paise we are going to give to states. Now states are free whether they want to spend this money on their own revenue expenditure or capital expenditure. Fine. They are free to spend this money. Suppose that out of the 17 paise, they are going to spend 10 paise on their revenue expenditure, and they are going to spend 7 paise on their capital expenditure. Right. Now, what was the argument of Mr. Chitambram? Mr. Chitambram was saying that, see, when we write this equation, right? When we write this equation, in this equation, it is inclusive of ABC. This ABC is how much? 17 paise. 17 paise. And if this 17 paise will go to states, states are free to spend either on revenue expenditure or on capital expenditure. So for example, if they are spending 10 paise on their revenue expenditure, and 7 paise on their capital expenditure, right? So this amount which we are showing here, how much? 17 paise. It should not be 17 paise, it should be only 10 paise. It should not be 17 paise, it should be only 10 paise. Got this point? Got this point or not? Tell me honestly. Have you got this point? Why it should be 10 paise rather than 17 paise? The reason is he is saying that here we are calculating what? Revenue deficit. And to calculate the revenue deficit, we are subtracting what? We are subtracting our revenue receipts from where? From what? From revenue expenditure. However, out of this revenue expenditure, some amount of money we are going to give to states, and states are going to spend some money on revenue expenditure, some money on capital expenditure. So what amount states are going to spend as an capital expenditure, it should not be the part of Government of India's revenue expenditure. It should not be the part of Government of India's revenue expenditure. That is why deduct this amount. Suppose that if that amount was like what? 17 paise state got, and state is spending how much? State is spending 12 paise on revenue expenditure, 5 paise from capital expenditure. Then this amount should be what? Then this amount should be 12. Because only 12 paise is going to be spent by the states as a revenue expenditure, 5 paise they are going to spend on capital expenditure. So what he mean to say is, whenever we have to calculate our revenue deficit, listen very carefully here. Listen very, very carefully here. Revenue deficit. Revenue deficit shows how much we have a deficit in our revenue account. And how we do calculate? It is the words of Chitambram. How we do calculate? We do calculate by subtracting our revenue receipts from our revenue expenditure. And in revenue expenditure, we also include the part which we do provide to the states. I told you, suppose that ABC. And this year, ABC is 17 paise. And this 17 paise is going to be spent by the states either on capital expenditure or their revenue expenditure. Right? So why do we have this part? Because states are going to spend that money which we are going to give them. They are spend that money in the capital formation. So it is no need to have this money in our revenue deficit. So what he suggested, if you want to find what is our effective revenue deficit, if you want to calculate our effective revenue deficit, what you have to do, in our revenue deficit minus gross capital formation by the states through receipts received by union government. Union government will give the money and you are going to spend that money where? So we want to know how much money you are going to spend on the capital formation. So just deduct that capital expenditure because we are calculating what? Revenue deficit. So that is why he called it as a EDR, effective revenue deficit. Right. So Chitambram Manmohan Singh, C.D. Deshmukh, they are those kind of the people who means I'm completely apolitical, and that's why I'm telling you, whatever they did in the past, they did make it available to you. So people like Chitambram, people like Manmohan Singh, right? They are all of our former finance minister, and they do contributed in the innovations, right? Like all means present finance minister, she also have did few things, right? When I will discuss the budgetary part allocations, I will let you know what the innovations she want to made, right? So every finance minister who is going to be the finance minister of India for a, a certain period, right, they have contributed, and this effective revenue deficit was an innovation of whom? PC, not Priyanka Chopra, P. Chitambram. In fact, the credit for introducing TDS system, tax deduction at source system, also goes to P. Chitambram. So introduction of tax deduction system properly functioning, right, and uh, presentation of this, I told you about the ad hoc treasury bill system, and then I told you ki we do have ways and means advance in the RBI. When we was discussing about RBI, I told you about ways and means advance. So ways and means advance implementation and implementation of TDS system, then introducing the EDR. These are some good contribution made by Mr. P. Chitambram. Fine. So I hope you got understanding of this. What is effective revenue deficit? So we have discussed four: BD, budget deficit; FD, fiscal deficit; PD, primary deficit, not Pratyekta Darpan; then RD, revenue deficit; then ERD, effective revenue deficit. All this deficit we have discussed. Right. Now, one more thing which I have mentioned you in the beginning of the lecture, what is outcome budget? So again, it was another innovation, or he was the person who emphasized on that thing. However, it was properly introduced by Pranab Mukherjee, former finance minister, former defense minister, former foreign minister, and our former president of India, one of the finest politician, statesmen we ever do have, right? So Pranab Mukherjee has introduced the system of outcome budget. However, Chitambram was also actively involved in this process to present the outcome budget. Why? What is outcome budget? And I think Venkat has mentioned something regarding uh, this thing. So what is outcome budget is every year government do make announcement कि we are going to spend this money here and we are targeting this thing. Every year just you tell the public what this is the target, and for that target we are going to spend this amount of money. For this target we are going to spend this amount of money. But what target actually you have achieved, it is not going to be mentioned anywhere, right? So this is why it is very important, we must properly tell to parliament ki what we have achieved of what we have targeted, right? So that is why when the budget document is presented, when the budget document is presented, it also comprise of what? It is also comprise of outcome kind of the thing. I think I have opened the wrong PDF. Just give me a second. Yeah, this one. So, key to the budget, list of the things: annual financial statement, demand for grants, financial bill, fiscal policy, expenditure budget, receipt budget, budget at glance. memorandum explaining the provisions of finance bill. Then output, outcome monitoring framework. Output monitoring framework. This is regarding outcome budget. This is regarding outcome budget, right? Implementation of budget, what we have implemented, right? Then outcome monitoring framework. So these two things, J and L, they are what? They are the part of outcome budgeting system. Is it clear? Okay. So today I'm stopping here. I have some work to finish, right? And it's urgent, so that's why I'm not able to continue from here. Tomorrow I will start with this, means proper discussion of this year's budgets, whatever the government has announced, and what are the important outlays, how they are important, why they are important, and how it is important for your exam. I will start discussing from tomorrow onwards. Okay. So I'm stopping right now. Right? I'll discuss tomorrow. Thank you.